Hello and welcome to another series of a popular webinar InvestNest, Spotlight on Businesses amid digital boom and commodity supercycle. My name is Santa and I'm your moderator for today's event. On behalf of Kalkine Media, I'm pleased to welcome our esteemed speakers from the leadership team of the top ASX listed players, IOUpay, and not to forget our refined and inquisitive audience of potential investors. Now, market swings are keeping the investors on their toes, as we know, amid this inflation anxiety, virus concern, and bond yield mania. The value versus growth stock debate is never ending. So while crypto volatility, digital trends, and commodity supercycle are keeping the investors at their toes, given the current thematic trends and sinusoidal share market trends, insights from the industry experts can be valuable. Therefore, today we have with us Mr. Calvin Yeap, who is the CMO of IOUpay. We'll be sharing insights on the business vision, strategy, and latest achievements from the respective businesses. Also, they will throw light on commodity supercycle and unveil the company's future plans. The business presentation will be for 15 minutes by a speaker, and it will be followed by 5 minutes of Q&A round. Webinar attendees can get their answers straight from the business leaders, and you can also post your questions in the Q&A chat box during the webinar. Same will be taken by the respective business leaders post their presentations. But before we start today's session, let me inform everyone that this webinar is for informational purpose only, and it is not a solicitation or recommendation to buy, sell, or hold the stocks of the company or engage in any investment activity under discussion. We are neither licensed nor qualified to provide any investment advice through this platform. So without any further ado, let's welcome our speaker of the day. I would like to call upon Mr. Calvin Yeap. He's the CMO of IOUpay. Now, as you know, that fintech company IOUpay is on the fast track for growth in its core market of Malaysia, as well as regional Southeast Asia. And to assist with its expansion plans, Calvin joined the company as Chief Marketing Officer recently. He has about 15 years of enriched experience in digital marketing, corporate communication, and stakeholder engagement across Southeast Asia. Before his move to IOUpay, Calvin was head of community and industry partnership team at Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, which is a Malaysian government agency. Calvin also has held senior positions with global travel technology company Commodities, leading its Malaysian operations for 5 years as head of operations and marketing, and as head of marketing for IPay88, and as a head of its global payment services division as well. He has successfully launched IPay88 in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Thailand, and has worked for the company in Indonesia, India, Singapore, and Vietnam. Welcome to InvestNest, Calvin. Please go ahead with your business presentation.
Hi, Samta. Good morning. Still morning here in Kuala Lumpur, and thanks for that kind introduction. So let me just pull up my presentation slide. Once again, very good morning, good afternoon as well, depending where you are. To our folks in Australia, thanks for joining us. And I think over the last 6 to 9 months, we have been flat out executing, of course, building our team, testing our platforms, expanding our network, and it's taken us up to until now to have really the additional time and resources to engage the investment market with talks like this. So we're really excited, and we know it's really important, part of being listed, and it's something we're looking forward to do more moving forward. So coming to our topics for today, of course, we talking about spotlight on business amid digital boom. So let me just move on to my next slide here. Just a standard disclaimer to the presentation for today. So I think before we move on into talking about IOU as a company, I think it's important for us to get some numbers and also kind of link it back to the topic that we're talking about today, being spotlight on business amid digital boom. So often the times when we talk about digital, it's often about making that equating to internet. So if we look at Southeast Asia in particular, the internet users has been growing. It was some 260 million users back in 2015. It was 360 million back in 2019, and it is expected to grow to 420 million in 2024. So it is a market with a huge potential, and just the sheer number of people are moving online to the internet. And this is where everything digital is then possible. And I think there's also a huge cashless movement, not just driven by the industry, but also by the various governments in Southeast Asia. So I think zooming in a little bit more now, let's talk about population. So out of that is the internet population. But in terms of population by itself, it is a market double the size of US at 655 million people. And out of that, we have 150 million who are active e-commerce users. And that has increased about 206% since 2015. So that's again a huge growth there. And the internet economy was estimated about 100 billion in 2019. And again, this is on track to reach about 300 billion by 2025 in ways of GMV or gross domestic value. Now, in terms of Southeast Asia population, if we break down the 655 million people, we have then categorized them into banked, unbanked, underbanked, and unbanked category. So in the adult population, we have about, say, 25% or so at 104 million people who are banked. So these are people who have access to bank account, credit, investments, insurance. And then we look into the second tier, which is the underbanked. Then we have about another 25% or so at about 98 million people who have basically just a bank account. And then that leaving it a huge 50% of the adult population in Southeast Asia being unbanked. So about 200 million people do not have access to bank accounts, credit, savings, or even insurance. So now, how big is internet economy within Southeast Asia? So if we look into the bottom right corner of the screen, that is the internet economy GMV as compared to the GDP. So in 2015, it's only 1.3%. And in 2019, it's 3.7%. And it's expected to grow to 8.5% in 2025. And this is in comparison to America. In 2016, it's about 6.5%. So that's where we are in terms of Southeast Asia. And I think I want to zoom in a little bit more today and looking into Malaysia. So looking into Malaysia, the latest statistic tells us we have about 27.4 million internet users. This is as of January 2021. And 95% of that in Malaysia are in the bank population. Out of that population, we have about 112% have access to online banking. So in other words, more than one, generally, maybe 1% has more to have access to more than one bank in Malaysia. And in terms of mobile banking penetration, that's 61.8%. And then the last two boxes at the bottom are the number of people that access to credit cards and also debit cards. So in terms of credit card ownership, as of 2020, we have about 30%. So out of 10 people in Malaysia, likely you find 3 who have access to a credit card. And whereas debit card, on the other hand, it's 143%. So that will mean, again, more than generally on average, perhaps 1% have more than one debit card in their wallets. So how is this market trend that is we're seeing in the Southeast Asia landscape moving into Malaysia? And then now, how is that being translated into what we deem as digital boom? So if we look into the specific numbers for last year, this is in 2020, right? The era of COVID-19, we would like to call it. So there is a survey that's being done by Statista and Rakuten Insights back in last year. So the question was impact of COVID-19 pandemic on online purchase behavior among consumers in Malaysia by gender. So what is the general consensus among Malaysians that have been surveyed? That they are purchasing more online. And a very small percentage of them say they do not make online purchase. So this huge change of everyday lifestyle, everything and anything absolutely being transferred to online. And on the right-hand side is the mobile banking transaction value and growth rate. So that is also being translated in 2020, the growth of 125% in terms of number of mobile banking transactions. So more than ever, the region, and specifically Malaysia, people are moving online, either for digital commerce or for mobile banking. And that is being spurred further growth by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, us as a company, we were transacting about 18 million transactions pre-COVID last year, before the lockdown. And to now, we're transacting some 20 million transactions a month consistently I wouldn't say post-COVID, we're still in the COVID era. So there is a catalyst of growth that's being spurred by COVID, changing the behavior of the consumers, moving their everyday life to online, and that's being translated into the adoption of various mobile banking and also digital payment instruments. So with that, I think I would like to move on into introducing us as a company a little bit more. And I will spend the last 10 minutes of the presentation today to explain a little bit about how application works. How My IOU being our flagship product, it's spurring that digital consumption within consumers. So as a company, of course, our goal is to be one of the leading digital transaction processor in a booming cashless economies of Southeast Asia. So we have been providing transaction service for the last 20 years. We have been providing varied mobile banking and digital payment services. We serve 20 Malaysia leading banks, insurers, and telcos. So we'd like to move on beyond transaction processing into higher value services such as BNPL, buy now, pay later, bill payments, mobile banking transactions, and digital commerce for large brands. So we do have the customers already from the years of experience and all the existing relationships we have with leading banks and insurers and telcos. So we would like to increase the technical capabilities from our end and with large scale upsizing and getting more services to our existing networks. And all these large communities that we connect, they all have appetite for various services, such as even buy now, pay later, bill payments. So in terms of business division, we have on one side mobile banking. So we're providing things like payment authentication, customer identification. It can be balance, account balance inquiry, one-time passwords. And then, of course, on the other side, we then have digital payment. Now, this is the exciting space that we're in. And in fact, as a company, we have diversified into digital payments and more recently into buy now, pay later, BNPL. And for that purpose, we have rebranded our company. We were called iCentric before. And to aspire, as we aspire into diversifying into our business into BNPL, we now call ourselves IOUpay. And our flagship product under BNPL is then called My IOU, that one can see right up there on the side of me. And I'll go back a little bit into focusing on the product itself after this. So in terms of our platform capabilities, so we have been providing secure communication all this time. So we enable large bands, telcos, connect to their communities in a way that we can provide them high volume, fast, secure transaction at a low price point. And that's something that we've been doing all these years. So with that, we have increased our capabilities, our platform to include credit scoring, anti-fraud. We have a consumer onboarding platform, including bill payment, and more importantly, BNPL transaction processing and account debiting. So these are the various capabilities that we built over the years from our traditional business of mobile banking, and now increasing the capabilities of platform in order for us to serve the needs of a BNPL service, a full service offering of BNPL. So these are some of the strategic partners that we have in the space of mobile banking and digital payments. We have been serving customers like Citi, AXA for many years, and in digital payments, more recently, of course, we have secure partnerships with IPay88, for example, Easy Store, and the list goes on. So I think with that, I want to go into explaining a little bit more about My IOU as a product offering. So this is a question that we've been getting quite often. So because our application My IOU is actually available for download for Malaysian consumers, so our friends in Australia would not be able to find this application on the Google Play and also App Store. So with that, I think I just want to spend a little bit of time today to explain how it actually works from the eyes of a consumer versus from the eyes of a merchant. So first up, as a consumer, so if you're a Malaysian consumer, you can, of course, download my IOU app from Google Play or App Store and go through the entire registration process. All you need is a Malaysian identification card, or my card is a form of identity card, looks something like this. Yeah. So with this, we will do all forms of eKYC, and we do data point checks on this card. So for example, there is a photograph of me here, and then I also require to do a selfie during registration. So there is a facial recognition that takes place behind the scenes to ensure that you are exactly the person that's using this ID for the registration purpose. So, and if you buy a debit card or a credit card during your registration, you will be given an instant credit approval of 1,000 ringgit, which is somewhere about 350 Australian dollars. So as a consumer, you also have the option to upgrade your limit. So with the upgrade limit option, you can pump it up to about 3,500 ringgit, which translates to say about 1,000 Australian dollars. So as a consumer, you walk into a store, and at first glance at the counter, perhaps you see something like this. So this is what we call as the point of sale material, or POSM. So it looks something like this with a QR code for the merchant. So this is where the consumer would know that that particular merchant that walked into, be it in-store or online, supports my IOU as a payment option. So what would I do then as a consumer? So as a consumer, I will then pull up my IOU app that looks something like this. So the first thing is a face recognition for me to authenticate as a user. So I'll just try Face ID again. So with that, it will load my home screen. So right at the front screen, you'll see the total credit limit you have as a user. So in this case, I did request for an upgrade of limit, definitely. So that's why I get a 3,500 ringgit limit on my account. So as a consumer now, if I want to purchase something and pay and split my payment into installments, it's really, really simple. So all I got to do is just click on the scan QR button. If I can just bring that up closer, here we go. So if I click on that, so you activate my camera on my phone, and I just need to scan the QR. So I can just, it's all rotated now to me. There you go. So once I scan the QR, it will ask me to confirm the name of the merchant and also the address of the merchant. This is just additional security steps that we put in to ensure that the customer are paying to the right merchant in this case. So I'll just say, yes, I confirm that. And then next, of course, I enter the amount that I wish to pay. So in this case, I'll just put in, let's say this particular transaction is 100 ringgit. And I click continue. So it gives me a summary of the payment details right at the bottom here in terms of my tenure, what is my payment date and all that. And all I got to do next is just click on done, and the transaction is then complete. So that's essentially the consumer user experience. So how is this life changing in what we call as the digital boom era in the COVID-19? So if you look at a standard Malaysian merchant today, if you offer credit card acceptance, so the question is, out of 10 customers that walk in through your store, how many actually has a credit card? Now, statistics show us, earlier that I shared to you in the slide, perhaps 3 out of 10 consumers that walk in through your store have an access to credit card. So out of the 3 people that have credit cards, how many can you offer an installment plan? So in order for me to explain credit card installment plan, which I think is important in my explanation of our product today, I need to explain 2 different terminologies. So one is issuing bank, and the other one is acquiring bank. So what is the issuing bank? So if I can just flip up a card, here we go. I'll just hide my credit card number for security purposes. Here we go. So this is a Citibank card, all right? So this card, the issuing bank in this case would then be Citi. So because Citibank is the one that issued the credit card to me. So what is then acquiring bank? Acquiring bank is the bank who basically, so this is an example of a credit card machine. So acquiring bank is the bank that provides the credit card machine to the merchant because they are acquiring the merchant onto the platform. So in order for you to offer a credit card installment in Malaysia, you must have a issuing bank and the acquiring bank, the same bank for you to enable that. In other words, if I got this terminal from Citibank and a customer walks in with a Citibank credit card, then I can offer Citibank installment credit card plan to the Citibank card holder. Now, if the customer doesn't have a Citibank card, there's no way for me to offer credit card installment plan to the consumer. I can, of course, offer normal full payment transaction. That is, of course, possible. But the question now is, can I offer credit card installment to the consumer? The answer is no. So it is a common sight in Malaysia. If you walk into a physical store, you have more than just one credit card machine. So you have multiple credit card machines in order for the merchant to offer various credit card installment plans to various credit card holders. So the key challenges here as a merchant, you had then multiple terminals for you to manage. And on top of that, the minimum threshold to enable a credit card installment plan, it's usually about 500 ringgit. So whereas being a BNPL service provider like ourselves, so in order for you to enable a BNPL transaction, the minimum transaction amount is 100 ringgit. So the threshold is a lot lower. So how would this be changed? If as a merchant, I would like to offer my IOU. So the question now is no longer out of 10 consumers, how many have a credit card? So out of 10, how many actually has a debit card? So again, the statistic shows us in Malaysia, that's more than 100%. So likely, one customers that walk in, out of 10, out of them maybe have, say, 14 debit cards. So all of them are potential customers now that you can offer installment plan as a payment option. And the beauty part is the consumers can apply, register, and get instant approval on the spot. So there is no way, for example, if you offer a Citibank, say, installment plan today, and a non-Citibank card customer walks in, and you say, okay, well, I can offer a Citibank installment plan on your credit card. You just need to apply for a card now. So you can apply for a card, but you can never get approval instantly. So on BNPL, on our platform, being my IOU, you can apply, register, and get an instant credit approved of 1,000 ringgit Malaysia, which is equivalent to about 350 Australian dollars on the spot. And with that, you can immediately go on with your purchase. So I think that's one key differentiating factor for the merchant. And the other thing that we could also do, so this is the case of a static QR. So when you say static QR, means this QR doesn't change. So it remains static. So we also support dynamic QR, and that's being done through a terminal such as this. So that is where our partnership with MyP1 comes in. MyP1 is basically a terminal provider. So we're working with them to actually enable or build in, pre-install our MyIOU app for the merchant onto the terminal itself. And this will enable the merchants to do transactions using the terminal with the consumer. So this is just explanation into kind of giving a sense of how our application works from a consumer standpoint versus, say, the merchant. So the merchant can have the flexibility as well. So we do offer a 2-month payment plan, 3, and up to a maximum of 6 month payment plan. So the flexibility to increase conversion for consumers and for merchants would then increase tremendously. So it's not longer that I can offer installment plan to credit card holders and it has to be minimum 500 ringgit. So now I have the ability to offer installment plan, essentially, to anybody that walks in, not just in store, but as well as online, the ability to split their purchase into a maximum of 6 months interest-free payment. So this would really facilitate the conversion of sales at a merchant. And I think the sheer number of people that have access to internet and the adoption of mobile banking in general, and as well as the simplicity of a solution would definitely help the merchant, and in this case as well as the consumers, in deciding how they should pay for their purchases moving forward. So right. So yeah, so this of course the application is available for download for Malaysians on Google Play and App Store, and that will be how the standard home screen will look like. But I did kind of show you, give you a quick demo, so to speak, in how the actual application works. So I think with that, I'm just going to close this down, perhaps with give a summary of our competitive advantage as compared to our competitors. So I think it boils down to a few points, I would think. I think one, we have been in the business for 20 years in the space of mobile banking and digital payment. And we have recently diversified and moving into offering BNPL as a full service. I think there is no BNPL service provider out there that could say they have 20 years of experience in mobile banking and digital payment under their belt. And I think that really puts us in a preferable position to kind of bring forth our services to our communities. I think two will also be boils down to our existing relationship and our existing communities that we have been serving all these years. And of course, we plan to leverage on those communities and offering BNPL service to those consumers. I think three, I could say our management team. So our executive team has a vast experience in the payment space. We have experience leading payment gateways, and we have existing connections, and we have experience in rolling out large-scale payment system infrastructure. And I think that would definitely be beneficial into where we're envisioning our business will go moving forward. And I think we also have the benefit of hindsight from our incredibly successful peers in Australia. So I think some of these insights tells us what we should watch out for, things like MPL and how to keep our costs down. And the fact that we operate here in Southeast Asia, we can keep our labor costs down. And of course, there are things that help us to optimize in terms of like what kind of merchant verticals is suitable for BNPL. How do we optimize in terms of TTV, total transaction value, and driving transactions for both consumers and also merchants. So I think all that does puts us in a more competitive landscape. And I think ultimately we at IOUpay, we do really focus in building shareholder values, and we are really driving towards profits in Southeast Asia. And that is something that we really focus, and it's dead set focus for us as a company and all executives. And our experience tells us that if we do that, we do have a strong pipeline as well from all the recent partnerships that we have made announcement. And I think the challenge here for us really as a brand that focus on quality, I think is on executing really, really well. And I think from experience tells us if we do that, I think the transactions and also the merchant will definitely follow. So I think with that, I will come to an end of my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Calvin. Hopefully you can hear me. This is Sage. I'll be taking over Samta. She's experiencing some technical difficulties on her end, but
Sure.
Your presentation was very insightful and the audience has responded well, and we have several questions for you if you don't mind.
Sure, let me just stop my screen share for a minute.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Perfect. Okay. So the first question for you is, hi Calvin, how are you? How's the hard launch going, and do you have a date for it?
Right, so that's actually two questions in there. So the question is, how are you? I'm great, thank you. I have a bit of a bad throat today, so it sounds a bit husky. I hope I'm still audible to most audience. So that's the first question. So the second question is, how the hard launch going, and do you have a date for it? So I think we have previously shared that we will be doing a market launch in June. We do have a date, but we plan to make an announcement on that in the coming weeks. So do watch the space in our social media account. And it is a full virtual launch. So that means wherever you are, be it if you're in Australia or in Malaysia or in India, you can of course participate in our virtual launch. So we will be launching in June, and the date, we do have a date, and we'll be making an announcement on the date very, very soon.
The next question is, Calvin, can you give an update on a per paid inventory if possible, please?
Right, so I think I will not go into specific providing information on that. Any announcement on our performance and prepaid inventory, we will make through our ASX announcements. But at this juncture, I will not go into any specific and give you a comment on that.
All right, so your next question is, IOU is focused on positioning itself with a first mover advantage in key Southeast Asian markets. How well does IOU's strategy align with the current market trends?
Right. So as shared in our last March 16 presentation, we plan to expand to two Southeast Asian territories this year. And I'm happy to say that we are definitely on track. Again, we will not comment specifically which market, but in my last recent interview, I did say that we do like Philippines and we do like Indonesia a lot. But again, we're not specifying any specific market at this juncture. And we will, of course, inform our shareholders and the market once that is being firmed up.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time to answer that.
I think if I can just pick this up, I think that's a very interesting question here coming from Anonymous. I'm just going to say, I'm going to answer live here. Noting that Malaysia is currently experiencing significant increase in locally transmitted COVID-19 cases, how do you see the MCO restriction affecting IOUpay capacity to support BNPL and the upcoming launch? So I think that's the beauty of the digital boom. As the statistics shows in my earlier presentation, COVID has not in any way negatively impacted the digital growth, but instead it has a counter effect and has been spurring tremendous growth as far as digital is concerned. So how we see this, because this example of how a QR code would appear in a physical in-store. And having said that, number of cases are increasing in Malaysia, all the economic sectors remains open. So, I mean, there are slight differences in terms of the various standard operating procedures that we put in place, more stringent SOPs, more stringent mask wearing. In fact, I have a mask right here because I'm in a room all by myself, so I do not need to wear a mask. The moment I step out from my door, then yes, I need to put on my mask on. So you can't dine in at a restaurant, but you can go to a restaurant and do a takeout. So the in-store retail are happening, but at the same time, our solution is not only catered for physical in-store, but as well as for online, which is why we are partnering with Easy Store, for example. So Easy Store is a shopping cart system provider. So for example, if you say that you are a merchant in Malaysia and you wish to start selling mouse, right? So let's say you want to start selling mouse and you want to start selling online. So how do you do that? So either you build a website all by yourself, or in this case, you get a shopping cart system, and all you need to do is just get a subscription of that, log in. It's a simple click and drop building your catalog. So you can then upload a photograph and say, okay, I want to sell this for say 200 ringgit, and what's the inventory and whatnot. So that's what Easy Store is. So Easy Store is a shopping cart system that allows you as a merchant to get an online store up and running in less than a day. So you can do that, and we have enabled My IOU as a payment option that is integrated into Easy Store. So any Easy Store merchant can then enable My IOU as a payment option to allow any online shoppers to convert their purchase into a buy now, pay later scheme for 2, 3, or 6 months. So I think, yes, it is impacting our everyday life, but in some cases, it's impacting us positively, leading to us doing more online transactions, doing more contactless payments. For example, everybody understands QR in Malaysia now because all the contact tracing application requires you to scan the QR. So that helps with an awareness, helps with education. So everybody's familiar with the experience of paying with QR. So that's much a safer way to pay as well, rather than using physical cash. Okay, so I'll mark that as done.
Thank you so much, Calvin. So we do have a lot of questions for you and interest in IOUpay. However, we might need to just take one more and then move on to the next part of the presentation.
Sure.
And remember, viewers, thank you so much for your interest in this. You can send any questions through to info@kalkinemedia.com, and we'll send them on to Calvin for you as well if they don't get answered in the session today. So the next question that we'll look at quickly is, Calvin, was there one that you particularly want to answer, or should I just pick one?
So you can go ahead, pick one as well.
All right, thank you. So question is, are global partnerships still on? I think you've answered that one. So how are you planning on staying ahead of the curve within the next 5 years? What's IOU's plan? Is there anything in particular, please?
I do, but it's something that I plan to share during our market launch. So we do have some exciting plans in terms of how we create differentiation in terms of our service as a BNPL offer. So we are toying with the idea to actually increasing consumer credit limits. So we want to be able to actually offer more than 3,500 ringgit credit. I think those are some of the things that we plan to do, and we want to do is exclusive offering also to the merchant. So do watch the space, especially during our launch. We will be sharing more details about whatever I just explained to you, a basic offering of how BNPL would work. But I think we're going to build something more than just that. And other than that, we're also going to do a rather exciting market launch as well, offer to both the consumer and also to the merchant. So the merchant will get some exclusive deals for them to sign up as a merchant. And as a consumer, there will be an incentive for you to try for the very first time to download and register for our app. So all that will come in the form of voucher codes and also referral rewards. So all that will be shared in detail during our virtual market launch in June.
Fantastic. Actually, I've just seen one question from one of your IOUpay investors. So we've just sneaked that in before we move on. It's from Ben Wintle, who says, Calvin, how are you using the experience with iPay 88 and NTT data to help drive the IOUpay in the same direction, please?
Right. So I would say that how I utilize my experience in general, rather than specifically in the two previous employers that I was with. I think what's important in this part of the world when we're doing outreach or awareness to consumers, it's that local touch that we need to bring forth in the markets that we operate. So for example, if I do something here in Malaysia and it works really well, I can't just really copy and paste that and put it into Philippines. So it will not work because the entire cultural dynamics and consumer behavior and consumer expectation is just totally different. And that's the beauty of diversity in this part of the world. So with that diversity comes a diversified ways of strategies in terms of reaching out to the target markets that you want to go for. And I think that's where I usually do when it comes to expansion into various markets. So it is not about just taking something that works in country A and have that replicated 100% for market B. So we need to tailor that kind of experience. And I think consumers and these markets demands that. So nobody wants to be treated like everybody else. Everybody wants to feel special. Everyone wants to feel exclusive. And that's where I think I hope the experience I have in my previous employment will bring value in this case to bring IOUpay as a brand, and more importantly, my IOU as a service for consumers, where it will be seen as a premium brand in BNPL service.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your answer. Just one more part to that. You mentioned perhaps going to the Philippines. Were you going to be applying for a digital bank license, was the second part to Ben Wintle's question. Right.
So as I mentioned, we say we like Philippines. So I did not say that we will go into Philippines. So we won't be going into, because all that announcement we need to make separately. And when we do, of course, all the details in regards to licensing and whatnot, that will be shared as well in those announcements. So I will encourage all our shareholders and also our viewers and fans to follow us on our social media accounts and Facebook and Instagram. We will be updating the market as and when those are made available.
Thank you, Calvin. Sorry about that slip. Yes, you didn't say you were going to, you said you liked Philippines.
That's
Beg
right.
your pardon.
Not me, rather we. So yeah, we all like Philippines.
Yes, it's a very nice place to visit.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. So yes, audience, if you didn't get to your question now, please send it in via the email address info@kalkinemedia.com. kalkinemedia.com, and we'll send that over to Calvin on your behalf. No, that's fine. So we'll just finish up the presentation. Perhaps we do have time for one more question and any final thoughts from Calvin before we finish up. Calvin, would that be okay with you if we take one more question?
Sure.
Thank you. So I'll just see what we haven't really discussed yet. Here we go. So there are several new entrants in the fintech and digital payment space, with many opportunities arising because of the economy scaling that way. How is IOU positioning itself to deliver value in such a highly competitive industry? And although you've touched on this a bit, how sustainable do you think your direction will be? And this is from Ken Kelly.
All right. So thanks for the question. I think I did mention that a little bit, how we kind of stand out from the crowd, so to speak. Because I can't think of any BNPL service provider out there today that could say that they have 20 years of experience in mobile banking and digital payment. So that's something that we've been doing for the last 20 years. And in fact, we are transacting some 20 over million transactions every month today. So I think that really puts us in a position that we could say that we have got the experience, we have got the system, the technology, and we also have the executive team to that able to leverage on the experience that we have and the communities that we have access to. So I think the challenge here for us really is about execution. And for example, the recent announcements that we have with, say, Easy Store, IOUpay, and MyP1, those existing, just that 3 partnerships alone, we have a combined potential merchant base of 75,000. So we do have a very strong pipeline. And I think for any new players coming into the space, there's a lot of catching up game to do for sure. So I think we encourage competitors, to be honest. You know, it makes us more, makes us on our toes, and to make sure that we deliver the best to set ourselves apart from the rest. But I think it boils down to that 3. You know, our experience, many years of experience in mobile banking, digital payments, our existing technology, which is proven, our team, you know, and the benefit of hindsight from all of our peers. I think that kind of really sets us apart, and how we plan to continue to move forward in this market.
Thank you so much again, Calvin, for reflecting upon the business stance and vision of IOUpay. Audience, we hope this Q&A session was insightful for you. And as I said, if we didn't get to your question today, please write into us, info@kalkinemedia.com, for your other specific questions, and we will get them answered by Calvin and even Stephen from Alton Rio on your behalf. Now, to finish up for today, I want to thank you again, Mr. Yeap, or Calvin, once again, and we are heading towards the session close. So thank you so much, Mr. Stephen and Mr. Yeap, for your takeaways for our audience, and I'm sure they've been very, very valuable for the respective businesses progressing amid the overall market charter and sectoral trends. Now, were there any final notes or closing statements you'd like to make to the investor audience here at Kalkine?
Not really. I just want to thank everybody for the time. It did went a little bit longer than we initially expected, I suppose. So yeah, just want to thank everybody for the attention and all the questions. Unfortunately, I think there's a few that we couldn't take up in time, and like you say, we'll take that offline when they send it in.
Thank you so much again, Calvin, for joining us, and I'd like to extend our gratitude towards our audience for attending the webinar. We hope you found that session informative. And for delivering any further inquiry into the market updates, audiences, please do visit our site. And speakers stay abreast with the market moves, stock markets, and economic transitions with Kalkine Media. We have live shows daily, and you can also visit our research website, kalkine.com. So our next Invest Nest webinar series will be soon. We try to hold them every month, and stay tuned for more information on that. You can connect with us on our socials via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And yes, please email us on info@kalkinemedia.com. We do love hearing from you. And with that, I will end the session.
If I can just end a live weather forecast from KL, it looks like a thunderstorm is coming.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Technology these days just keeps us so close to each other.
Thanks, H.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Calvin. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Invest wise and stay apprised with Kalkine. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.